It's a beautiful chilly day here in Los Angeles, December, approaching the end of the year, approaching Hanukkah next week. And it's an honor to be here with you to come together and to do some learning out of my favorite Jewish text, the Siddur, filled with so much information, inspiration, and just connection. When I open up the Siddur, I'm connected not only to everyone else in the room praying, but I'm connected to my ancestors who prayed these same words. I'm connected to our fellow Jews around the country, around the world, and God willing, connected to many, many future generations of Jews as well, who will all be using this sacred text and connecting to it as well. So last week, we finished Pesukei de Zimra, the songs and psalms of praise that came right after the Birchot HaShachar, the opening blessings of Shabbat morning. And we've arrived at the main service of the Shabbat morning experience, Shacharit, literally meaning the morning prayers, the core morning service. And just like in the evening service, if you remember for Friday night, we had two main parts of the evening service. The core part was the Amidah, the standing prayer, and before that we had the Shema and its blessings. And the same is going to be true here for the Shabbat morning service. The two parts, the main parts are going to be the Shema and its blessings, beginning with the call to worship, and then we're going to have the Amidah, the central part of the Shabbat morning Shacharit service. So I invite you to turn to page 147 in our red Siddur Lev Shalem. And we left off last week, if you recall, on pages 145 and 146, the last prayer, Nishmat, the beautiful poetic prayer leading us into this transition moment of Shacharit. And the reason why this is the transition moment is because it's at this point on this page, either at the very top of the page on festivals or on the second paragraph on Shabbatot, where the Cantor will begin the formal chanting of the Saturday morning Shabbat service. So if you see over here, the second paragraph, it says over here on Shabbat, the leader, the Cantor, begins here. And then at the top of the page on festivals, the leader or the Cantor begins right over here. So Shacharit formally has not started yet, but the Cantor kind of jumps the gun a little bit and wants to get in on the last few prayers of Pesukei de Zimra before leading the congregation formally in the morning prayers of Shacharit. At the very top of the page, Ha'el b'ta'atzumot uzecha. This is still on Shabbat morning, the end part of Pesukei de Zimra, where if we have two prayer leaders, the first prayer leader is still going to be leading here. God, in the fullness of your power, great in accord with your glorious name, mighty in all of time, awesome in your awe-inspiring deeds, sovereign, enthroned on high. And then right over here, Shochen ad marom vekadosh shemo, dwelling forever, exalted and holy is your name. As the psalmist has written, Befi Yesharim Tithalal. Vechatuv rananu tzadikim baronai la'yesharim navat tehillah. Then Befi Yesharim. Sing, O you righteous, to Adonai. Praise offered by the upright is lovely. And then we have in this next paragraph, Befi Yesharim Tithalal. Uvdivrei tzadikim titbarach, uvilshon chasidim titromam, uvekerev kedoshim titkadash. You are exalted in the speech of the upright. You are blessed in the words of the righteous. You are glorified in the language of the devoted. You are sanctified in the midst of the holy congregation. Continuing on the theme of Pesukei de Zimra, of praising God, of glorifying, exalting, and really just giving all of ourselves to thank God for all of the wondrous deeds and for the gift of creation and the gift of Shabbat. And if you notice over here in this paragraph, we have four letters that are emboldened. We have a Yud for Yesharim, a Tzadik for Tzadikim, a Chet for Chasidim, right? And a Kuf for Kedoshim. Put that together, and what do you get? Yitzchak. There he is, our second ancestor, hidden right here at the formal start of Shacharit. Yitzchak right here in the 4 sentences leading us into the Shacharit service. A nice way to find our ancestors hidden. Usually we're going to find the technique of acrostic that our sages and the rabbis composed, but here it's a really lovely reference to our forefather Isaac. Uvmakalot rivavot amcha beit Yisrael. So the choruses of the thousands of your people, the house of Israel, joyously glorified your name in every generation of our ancestors, to acknowledge and acclaim you, to bless and honor you, to exalt and glorify you, to praise, laud, and exalt you, adding our own tribute and the songs of those to David, Jesse's son, your anointed servant. Now, just a little bit about the Nusach. Nusach, as I've mentioned, is our sacred musical language of the motifs, modes, and melodies that make a service special, make a service what it is. So here in this part of the service, we're going to have the special musical motif, ya da 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 dum, or da 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 dum, minor, okay, in the musical mode of Jewish minor, or Magen Avot in the Jewish prayer modes, but mostly that motif, da 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 dum. We'll hear that repeated over and over again. So, for example, when I first start chanting the service right here every Shabbat morning, now in the more modern service, I start at the very beginning, but if this was traditional, I would start here at Shochenot. It's what we did here actually up until a few years ago, where now we have a more incorporated service where the rabbi and Cantor will lead from the beginning. It's another model. So I will start Shochen ad marom vekadosh shemo. And then here at Sinai, we have a really beautiful blend of melodies, mostly by Cantor Carl Erstein, our cantor who served here from 1947 through 1972. And then also a few melodies that are kind of speckled in by Cantor Jacob Mendelson. So one of his melodies is Befi Yesharim Tithalal Uvdivrei Tzadikim Titbarach Uvirshon Chasidim Titromam Uvekerev Kedoshim Titkadash. There's that motif again. And then we'll bring it back again just to really hammer it in. We're doing this melody, this motif over and over again. Last paragraph of 147. Uvemakalot rivevot hamecha beit Yisrael. There it is. And we continue praying. We have our beautiful melody. Lehodot lehalel leshabeach lefa'el leromem. This is Cantor Erstein. Lehader levarech le'ale u'lekales al kodi berei shirot v'tishbechot David ben Yishai. Here comes the motif. Avdecha meshichecha. There's the end of it. We turn the page. And then, for the beginning of this paragraph of Yishtabach, yes, you guessed it, same motif. Yishtabach shimcha la'ad malkeinu. There it is. And then the Chatima, the last section of this prayer, the red triangle. Berachot vehodaot me'ata ve'ad olam. Same motif, right? Baruch atah Adonai. And then back to a beautiful motif that we used earlier. El melech gadol matishbachot. El hahodaot Adonai niflaot. Habocher b'shirei zimra. Melech el chei ha'olamim. And that takes us into the Chatzik Harish. But I don't want to skip over the Yishtabach, because this Yishtabach prayer, as I mentioned last week, is the culmination, the final prayer of the Pesukei de Zimra section of the service. The prayer, by the way, the section of the service began with the prayer Baruch She'amar, taking us all the way back to page 122. Page 122 is the formal start of Pesukei de Zimra, verses of song, verses of psalms. And then it takes us all the way through from 122, all these prayers of blessing and exalting God's name, all the way through 148. This is the final prayer. And the Yishtabach prayer is really beautiful because it's revolved around the theme of the number 15. So there are 15 expressions of praise in the first part of the paragraph. And then once we get to Baruch Atah Hashem, there's going to be 15 words after that. So the 15 expressions of praise. May your name be praised always and everywhere, our sovereign, great and holy, for it is fitting, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to sing songs of praise to you, to ascribe strength and sovereignty, holiness and eternity to you, to praise and exalt you, to thank and bless you now and forever. Within those verses, 15 expressions of praise. And then we have after Baruch Atah Hashem, El Melech Gadol Batishbachot, El HaHodaot, Adon HaNiflaot, HaBocher B'Shirei Zimra, Melech El Chei HaOlamim. 15. So what's so special about the number 15? Well, we have to turn to our dear friend Gematria for that. Gematria, as a reminder, is the practice of assigning a numerical value to each of the Hebrew letters. So we start from the beginning. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, Dalet is 4, Hey is 5, Vav is 6, Zayin 7, Chet 8, Tet 9, and Yud 10. So on and so forth. It gets us all the way to, I think, 400 by the time we get to Taf. So if we take 15 in Gematria is 10 plus 5. What's the letter for 10, as I mentioned? Yud. And what's the letter for 5? Aleph Beis Dalet Hey. Hey. Yud, Hey. That's one of the names of God. So here we are in Yishtabach, God's name through Yud, Hey, also referencing the Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, as we see here whenever we see God's name, the Tetragrammaton, the Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Yud, Hey is one of the ways that we express God's name. That's why if we are just counting in Hebrew and we need to write the number 15 in Gematria, and even 16, because Yud Vav, that's all, Yud Hey, Yud Vav, those are kind of like, associated with God's name. We don't write 10 plus 5. We're going to actually write, I think it's, 9 plus 6. So we do Tet Vav instead of Yud Hey for God's name. So 15 expressions of praise, 15 words after the Chatimah, all ending this culmination of Pesukei de Zimra. The two brachot, as we mentioned before, Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach, are considered complementary, and one is not recited without the other. The Psalms and biblical passages of Pesukei de Zimra are preceded and followed by these formal blessings, just as the Torah reading itself is surrounded by blessings. So there we go. That's the end of Pesukei de Zimra, and now we have a Chatzi Kaddish. As I've mentioned before, whenever we see a Kaddish, not a mourner's Kaddish, but either a half Kaddish, Chatzi Kaddish, or a Kaddish Shalem, that teaches us that either something important is about to happen with a Chatzi Kaddish, or with Kaddish Shalem, something important in the service has just happened. So what's happening now? The Chatzi Kaddish is preparing us for something important. What's coming up? The Shema and its blessings. And then we're going to have a Kaddish Shalem, a formal Kaddish, after the Amidah, after a very important section. So we have the two Kaddishes kind of bookending this core part of the Shacharit service, the Shema and its blessings, and the Amidah, the two main parts of all of our morning services, actually. Shabbat specifically, but this applies to our weekday morning services, festival services, high holy day services, and of course here for Shabbat. And back to Nusach, back to our melody, we're going to return to the same musical motif. Da 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 da. This beautiful Chatzi Kaddish set by Cantor Carl Erskine. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabba בעלמא דברח קירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב והימרו Amen. Everyone joins in. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam Le'almei Almaya. Everyone sings Yitparach. I continue. Yitparach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitale V'yitalal Shemei Dekudsha Brichu Brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shihirata. Melody again. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran be'alma ve'yimeru. Amen. So one word again about our Siddur and kind of how it gives us instruction. The prayer leader, the cantor, is responsible for keeping us on track, to start us off with the first few words of a blessing, and to complete the chatima, literally the signature of each blessing, as indicated by the red triangle, both on the left in English and the right in the traditional Hebrew. And then, if any word is in bold, such as Amen in the Chatzi Kaddish, and then on the next line, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam Ulalmei Almaya, and Brichu, Amen, all of those words in bold are for the congregation, for all of you, to join in those words. And this line also is going to be chanted or recited by the congregation when we have the mourners praying the mourners Kaddish. It's almost like saying to the mourners, you are not alone. We are here. Yes, God's great name should be acknowledged forever and ever. It's praying by ourselves, but in community. Praying alone together. We need to have the presence of at least a Jewish quorum. In traditional Judaism, at least 10 adult men, right, over the age of bar mitzvah, the 13th Hebrew birthday. Here at Sinai Temple and in the egalitarian tradition, both men and women are counted towards the 10. There's no separation or of gender. So everyone comes together to say the Kaddish, to exclaim together that God is great, that God's name is worthy of being praised. Okay, now the formal start of Shacharit, page 149. 2 parts, as we mentioned, the Shema and its blessings, and then the Amidah. So for the Shema and its blessings, we're going to have the call to worship, the Baruch Hu, just like we had in the evening service, and then we're going to have 2 blessings before the Shema, and we're going to have 1 blessing after the Shema, similar to what we had in the evening service. But in the evening service, we had 1 additional blessing after the Shema. So it was 2 before and 2 after. In this case, we just have the 2 blessings before the Shema, and we're going to have the Shema and its blessings. And then we'll have 1 long extended blessing after the Shema before we get into the Amidah. So let's start. Page 149. The Baruch Hu is the call to worship. So the cantor starts with the first line, bows, and another practice, when we bow, we always stand up straight for God's name. That's the practice of bowing. So whether it's later in the Amidah or here, Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. Congregation responds, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leholam va'ed. I repeat, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leholam va'ed. So that's the practice. We bow at this section. Notice how Siddur Lev Shalem gives us the instruction right there at the bottom, that cool little squiggly dude. I don't know how to describe him, but right there next to Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leholam va'ed, that's the instruction that we bow. But whenever we bow, as I mentioned, we stand upright for God's name. It'll be true later on as well. So that's the call to worship. The cantor says, praise to God, praise God to whom all praise is due, is directed. And then everyone responds, praise Adonai to whom all praise is directed, le'olam va'ed, forever and ever. We turn the page. First blessing before the Shema, all about creating light. Yotzer or. The beginning of the blessing here at the top. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. So this blessing at the top is adapted from a verse in Isaiah, chapter 45, verse 7, where it says, Oseh shalom uvorei ra. God who makes peace and creates evil. So that is the source text for this blessing at the top, but the rabbis adapted that verse to say we don't want to be thinking about creating blessing, light and evil over here, or creating peace and evil at the start of our Shacharit service. We're going to adapt Ra to Kol, which technically incorporates evil, but it incorporates everything else, a much more universal expression of God's creation. So, Yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. God who forms light and creates darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. So the congregation, by the way, was standing for the Chatzi Kaddish. We stand for Kaddishes, and then still remain standing for the call to worship. And then after this prayer at the top, everyone is seated. So now, once again, we have kind of a choose your own adventure, if this is a Shabbat or a festival. If it happens to be Shabbat, which is what we're going to talk about, we're going to continue right here on page 150 and page 151. These prayers are specific for Shabbat. And then if it happens to be a festival service, which is on a weekday, we're going to skip pages 150 and 151 and go right to the bottom of 152. Just this paragraph over here at the bottom. This paragraph at the bottom is going to be, by the way, the same section of the service that we're going to recite on weekday mornings as well. The Shabbat Shacharit service is going to be almost identical to a weekday morning service. Remember, in Pesukei de Zimra, we had extra psalms that were added because of the beauty and holiness of Shabbat. But here in Shacharit, it's going to be pretty much, straight as what we're doing day after day. The addition is going to be these two pages over here, pages 150 and 151, the prayers specific for Shabbat. So the prayer on 150 starts, Hakol yoducha ve'hakol yeshabechucha ve'hakol yomru ein kadosh kadonai. All thank you, all praise you, and all declare, none is as holy as Adonai. All will praise you forever, creator of all. So that's kind of very universal, just like the Yotzer prayer. But now we're going to be getting more into the specifics of Shabbat. Okay? So over here, actually a little bit later, this is still going to be kind of more of creating light and darkness, but this is still specifically over here for the Shabbat liturgy. The Cantor continues towards the end. None is like you, Adonai, our God in this world, but none but you will be our sovereign in the world that is coming. No one but you exists who will redeem us and usher in the Messianic age, and none can compare to you, our deliverer, giving life to the dead. Okay, page 151. El Adon. Here is a very famous piyut that is recited every Shabbat morning. And here we go. We're back to the acrostic theme, right? Here. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Next paragraph. Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun. Oh, look at that. Instead of a samech, we have a sin. Tricky. So we have the same sound as a samech, but we have a sin as well. So we can still count that as an acrostic. Samech, sin, ayin, pei, tzadik, kuf, resh, shin, taf. So a complete acrostic from aleph to taf. The one exception being instead of having a samech, we have a sin. So same sound, but still an acrostic. Not quite there. Okay, so El Baruch, El Adon al Kol Hama'asim. God, Master. This piyut, commonly attributed to mystics of the first millennium, uses imagery based on the visions of Ezekiel that describe a variety of heavenly hosts. It further develops the theme enunciated in the previous prayers that everything in creation praises God. We're going to continue this theme through the Kedusha de Sidra, which we'll see in a couple pages. Here, That thought is extended to heavenly hosts. Even heavenly powers offer praise to God. The use of an alphabetical acrostic may suggest that God's word is the primary constructive element of all creation. And that's a famous rabbinic thought that creation was made based off of the blueprints of the Torah. That in fact, Torah came first, and through the blueprints of Torah, God was able to make creation. So beautiful piyut, angels praising God, and so the array of heavens, Sfanim, Ofanim, and holy beings, all the heavenly hosts give praise and glory and honor to God. Now on page 152, we have a prayer specifically referencing Shabbat. This, once again, will only be recited on Sabbaths, and if it's not the Sabbath, we will have skipped the previous page and also the top of this page and moved right onto the bottom. But it is Shabbat, so we're going to have this prayer specifically about Shabbat. La'el asher shavat mikol hama'asim bayom hashvi'i hit'ala v'yashav al kiseh kavodo tif'eret ata layom hamenucha oneg kara layom hashabat. So, who ceased work on the seventh day and ascended the throne of praise, robed in majesty for the day of rest, calling Shabbat a delight. Another one of the mitzvot is to have delight in Shabbat. Oneg Shabbat. It's whether it's through prayer, whether it's through tasty food, dressing in your nice clothes, setting the table, using your finest china. All of this adds to the celebration of making Shabbat truly special, truly delighting and celebrating in the joy of Shabbat. Such is the distinction of the seventh day, that God ceased all work, and so the seventh day itself praises God and says, Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat, a song of Shabbat, it is good to thank Adonai. Let all creatures likewise celebrate and bless God, offering praise, honor, and glory to God, the ruler, creator of all, who in holiness grants peaceful rest to the people Israel on the holy Shabbat. May your name, Adonai, our God, be hallowed, and may the thought of you, our sovereign, be celebrated in the heavens above and on earth below. Through the praise, though the praise due you, our Redeemer, is beyond any offered by your handiwork or the lights you have made, may they continue to always sing your glory. This is a theme that we have in the Kaddishes as well. It's like, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, that we know that what can our singular voice do to give thanks and gratitude to God, the creator of everything? What could we possibly do? Yet we still offer our thanks and praise for the daily miracles, for everything that we have, for Shabbat, for all the handiwork, for everything that God has made to express our creation as a sign, a small, infinitesimal token of our gratitude and appreciation for all of creation. And yet, what can we do? It's still about us. It's about what we can do to offer thanks and praise. So it ends, Al meore or she'asita yefarucha sela. And now we make it to the Kedusha de Yotzer, or the Kedusha de Sidra, on page 153. This version of the Kedusha recited in the first bracha, we're still in that first blessing, right, of creating light and darkness. Yotzer or uvore choshech. This bracha blesses God for the creation of the morning light. Every Kedusha is based on the mystical visions of Isaiah and Ezekiel. Each prophet described an angelic chorus. Isaiah saw them singing the famous words, Kadosh, 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 holy, 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 in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 3. Ezekiel heard them reciting Baruch Kevod Adonai, praise is Adonai's glory, Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 12. The Kedusha is placed here in the blessing of creation, as if to say that both heaven and earth offer praise to God. In the mind of the mystics, all of creation constitutes a praise of God. Every created being, animate and inanimate, sings to God. And that's another beautiful concept in Judaism, that all animals, just by their expression of their voice, birds tweeting, dogs woofing, cats meowing, all of this is an innate praise of God by default. Yet, we humans have free will. We can choose how our voices are used. We can choose to have bracha, or klala, blessing or curse. Chayim v'mavet, life and death. And the Torah tells us, uvacharta b'chayim, that we should choose life. We should choose blessing. We should choose goodness. We should choose peace. We should choose to be good. We have the choice. And we are commanded as Jews to make the right choice. Not once, but every single moment of creation. It's really beautiful. So this whole section over here, angels calling out to each other, they all are pure, they're almighty, they revere and carry awe of the will of the Holy One, they sing Kadosh, 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 they sing Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo. Le'el Baruch Ne'imot Yitenu, they offer adulation to God, whom they bless, they chant songs and voice their praises to the Sovereign, the living and enduring God. For God alone achieves victory, creates anew, masters war, sows righteousness, cultivates deliverance, effects healing, is praised with reverence, and is the author of wonders. The very last part over here, HaMechadesh betuvo bechol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit. This is going to be the Chatima, the concluding verse of this first prayer of creation. Remember, we're still in the Shema and its blessings. We had the call to worship. We're in the first blessing of creation. It says over here, in God's goodness, the work of creation is renewed each day, as the psalmist declared, thank the Creator of the great lights, for God's love is everlasting. Cause a new light to shine on Zion, or Chadash al Sion Ta'ir, and may we all soon be worthy of its illumination. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you God, creator of lights. So a Chatima is a summary. It's succinct form. In the in modern terms, we have a TLDR. Have you heard about this? It's like too long, didn't read. It's like on Reddit, all these young people, it's like, that's way too long. I don't want to read the whole thing. What's like, give me the cliff notes in my day. Like what's the essence? What's the ikar? In this case, it's that blessed is God, the one who is the creator of light. So God, author of creation, is the summary, the too long, didn't read version of this prayer. So which began, by the way, all the way back on page 150 with the blessing at the top. Blessed is God, King of the universe, creator of light and darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. The end of the first blessing over here, Yotzer HaMeorot, God, the creator of lights. End of the first blessing. Start of the second blessing is going to be on page 154. And as I mentioned on the Friday night class, we have the Ahavat Olam prayer on Friday night, that God's love is forever. And then here on Shabbat morning, we have the sister prayer, Ahava Rabbah, God's abundant love of us. Ahava Rabbah Ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. You have loved us deeply, Adonai, our godless compassion. So this is going to be the theme, that God loves God's creation. God specifically loves us. And how do we respond to God's love? With the Shema, saying that we should love God in return. It's a reciprocal relationship. And how is God's love expressed to us? It's not just, oh, I love you. No, it's the gift of Torah. It's the gift of mitzvot. It's the gift of structure. It's the gift of laws and mitzvot and ethics. You have loved us deeply, Adonai, our God, and showered us with boundless compassion. Avinu Malkenu, our Father, our King, for the sake, or our King, our Father. No, our Father, our King, Avinu Malkenu, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you and to whom you taught the laws of life, so may you be gracious to us and instruct us. Love through instruction. Kind Creator, have compassion for us. Open our hearts so that we may understand, and with love, discern, hear, and study. Observe, perform, and fulfill all of the teachings of your Torah with love. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Attach our hearts to your mitzvot. Unify our hearts to love and revere your name, so that we never lose hope. As we trust in your great, holy, awe-inspiring name, we will delight and rejoice in your deliverance. We gather our tzitzit together. Bring us safely from the four corners of the earth. Let's see. There it is. Ve'havi'enu l'shalom me'arba kanfot ha'aretz. That's where it is in the Hebrew. Bring us safely from the four corners of the earth and lead us in dignity to our land. For you are the God who effects deliverance. You have chosen us from all other tongues and peoples, always drawing us nearer to your name, that we may truly acknowledge you and lovingly proclaim your oneness. Blessed are you, Adonai, who lovingly cares for the people Israel. The second bracha. First bracha about God as creator of creation, light and darkness. Second bracha about God's love for us. The Hebrew root, aleph, he, vet, meaning love, appears 6 times in this passage, both as a noun and as a verb. Reuven Hammer points out that 3 of them speak of our love for God and 3 speak of God's love for us. While reciting this bracha, the worshiper can anticipate the 7th occurrence, which is found in the first paragraph of the Shema. You shall love Adonai, your God. So 6 expressions of love, 3 to God, 3 God to us, and the 7th one, which is going to round everything out. 7 is creation and wholeness in the Ve'ahavta. We've made it. Here it is. The first core part of the service, Kriyat Shema, on 155. Same occurrence, same exact text as we had in the evening service, the declaration of faith, not really a prayer, but a declaration of faith. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai alone, or Adonai is one. And then we recite quietly, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Praise be the name of the one whose glorious sovereignty is forever and ever. And then just like in the evening service, we have the 3 paragraphs of the Shema. The first paragraph, Ve'ahavta, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 9. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all that is yours. Take these words that I command you this day. These words that I command you this day shall be taken to heart. Teach them again and again to your children. Speak of them when you sit in your home, when you walk on your way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign upon your hand, tefillin, and they should be for totafot, or a symbol between your eyes. Inscribe them upon the mezuzot, right? Literally the mezuzahs, upon the doorposts of your home and on your gates. The commandments for tefillin and mezuzot. Next page, 156 and 157. Just 156. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's the same as the evening service. The second paragraph about reward and punishment from Deuteronomy chapter 11, verses 13 through 21. And then the third paragraph of the Shema, all about wearing tzitzit, from Numbers chapter 15, verses 37 through 41. And why do we wear tzitzit? Lema'an tizkeru ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim le'lohechem. We should wear tzitzit to be reminded to observe all of the mitzvot of Adonai in heart as they lead you astray. Then you will remember and fulfill all of my mitzvot and be holy before your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. And now we've made it to the last blessing before the Amidah. So we had the 2 blessings before the Shema. We had creation. The second one is God's love for us, Ahava Rabbah. And now the blessing after the Shema and its blessings is going to be all about redemption. Starting over here, Emet ve'yatziv. Emet ve'yatziv is going to be the sister prayer to Emet ve'emunah in the evening service. Also, we had that after the Shema, beginning the prayer for redemption in the Friday evening service. So, Emet ve'yatziv ve'nachon ve'kayam ve'yashar ve'ne'eman ve'ahu ve'chaviv ve'nechmad ve'na'im ve'nora ve'adir. My goodness, that's a lot. This teaching is constant, well-founded, enduring, righteous, trustworthy, beloved, cherished, desirable and pleasing, awe-inspiring and majestic, well-ordered and established, good and beautiful, and so incumbent upon us forever. Wow, that's a lot of different ways to say this is important. Don't forget about this prayer. Very correct, very appropriate. It continues on the next page. Emet Elohei Adam, Emet Elohei Olam Malkenu, Tzur Yaakov Magen Yishenu. Truly the God of the universe, our sovereign, is the stronghold of Jacob and our protecting shield. The Cantor continues, Ledor vador hu kayam u'shemo hu kayam, v'chiso nachon u'malchuto ve'munato lahad kayamet. Kiss and release the tzitzit at this point. God's teaching is living and enduring, truthful and beloved throughout our time. And now we're going to have reference to our ancestors over here. So, truly Adonai, our God and the God of, truly you are Adonai, our God and the God of our ancestors, our sovereign and our ancestors' sovereign, our Redeemer and our ancestors' Redeemer. Here's the word redemption. This last prayer after the Amidah, after the Shema, before the Amidah, is all about redemption, God redeeming us. You are our creator and the rock of our deliverance, our redeemer and help. So you are known throughout time, for there is no God but you. Ezrat avotenu atahu me'olam. You are always the help of our ancestors, a shield and deliverer for their descendants in every generation. You abide at the pinnacle of the universe. Your judgment and your righteousness extend to the ends of the earth. Blessed are the ones who attend to your mitzvot and place your teachings and words on their hearts. Truly, you are the ruler of your people, a mighty sovereign who takes up their cause. More emet. This word emet in bold keeps on repeating. Truly, emet. You were at the beginning, and you will be at the end. Aside from you, we have no ruler who can redeem and deliver. Here we go. A couple more paragraphs over here until we get to that final prayer of redemption, referencing Mi Chamocha, the Mi Chamocha prayer right there from the Song of the Sea. Remember, we have the full Song of the Sea at the very beginning of the service. Every morning we have in Pesukei de Zimra, we have the recollection of crossing the Red Sea and expressing our song of thanks for deliverance. Adonai, our God, you redeemed us from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Their firstborn you slayed, your firstborn you redeemed. You split the sea, you drowned the wicked, you rescued your cherished ones. The waters engulfed their oppressors, not one of them survived. Then your beloved sang in praise, acclaiming God for all that had occurred. The cherished people offered songs of thanksgiving, hymns of praise, and blessings to the sovereign, ever-living God, who is transcendent, powerful, and awe-inspiring, humbling the haughty, raising up the lowly, freeing those in chains, redeeming the poor, helping the weak, and answering God's people when they cry out. Tehilot le'el elyon baruch hu mevorach. Our homage is to God on high, who is ever praised. Moses, Miriam, and the people Israel joyfully sang this song to you. Here it is. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nadar b'kodesh, norat tehilot osefele. Who is like you, Adonai, among the mighty? Who is like you, adorned in holiness, revered in praise, working wonders? And this next line over here is different, whether it's the evening service or whether it's the morning service. In the evening, we had Malchutecha, Malchut Kol Olam, Malchutecha Ra'u Vanecha, Bokeh Yam Lifnei Moshe, Ze'eli Anu Ve'amru. And here in the morning, we have Shira Chadasha, Shibechu Geolim L'Shimcha Sfatayam, Yachad Kulam Hodu Vehim Lichu Ve'amru. At the edge of the sea, the rescued sang a new song of praise to your name. Together as one, they thanked you and acclaimed your sovereignty, saying, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Adonai will reign forever and ever. And then we have Tzur Yisrael, Kulma Bezrat Yisrael, so on and so forth. Stronghold of the people Israel, arise and help the people Israel, redeem as you promised Judah and the people Israel. Our Redeemer is called Adonai Tzebaot, the Holy One of the people Israel. And finally, we have, again, this summary at the end. Remember, the too long didn't read. What's the summary? Blessed is Adonai, the one who liberated the people Israel. Ga'al Yisrael, the blessing after the Shema, redemption. So, call to worship, blessing of creation, God is creator, blessing of God loving us, his people Israel, the Shema and its 3 paragraphs, and then one big long prayer of redemption. And we've made it through the first part of the Shema and its blessings. Now, we have on page 159, all the way through page 166. This is the Amidah. This is the core of the Shabbat morning service. We're going to have another Amidah later in Musaf, but that's the additional Amidah. That's the one that we do because there was an additional offering on Shabbat. This is the core morning Amidah, the core morning service. And I only want to call our attention to one blessing here in the Amidah. We spent a lot of time in our Friday night class. You can watch that here on YouTube as well. But every Amidah, as I've mentioned, has 7 main blessings. The first 3 blessings, the blessing of ancestors, the second blessing of God's might, the third blessing of holiness. And that's going to be extended. Right over here on page 161 is our third blessing of holiness. Blessings 1 and 2, by the way, it's easily pointed out. First bracha, ancestors on 159. Second bracha, God's saving care on 160. The third bracha, God's holiness. In the morning service and in the afternoon service, this is going to be expanded. In the evening service, there was no repetition of the Amidah. We just had a symbolic repetition. If you remember, it was called the bracha me'ein sheva. That was towards the end of the service. I think it was page 50. Now I'm calling myself to this. Let's see. Page 50. There it is. Page 53. The symbolic repetition of the Amidah, pages 53 and 54. Here in the morning service, traditionally, we will pray the Amidah privately, and then the Cantor will do a full repetition. We'll recite the entire Amidah out loud. In today's tradition, we do what's called a Heicha Kedusha, where the Cantor will lead the first three blessings out loud, Avot, Givarot, and Kedusha. And then once we finish this page on 161, we pray the remainder of the Amidah privately, allowing for us to pray the traditional words through the end and then offer our own benediction at the end of the Amidah as well. So when we have the Amidah out loud, the Kedusha, this is recited only with a minyan, is going to be expanded. We hallow your name in this world as it is hallowed in the high heavens. As your prophet Isaiah described, each cried to another. We have the same text, but here it is the formal Kedusha. We had the same Kadosh, 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 right? Holy, holy, holy is Adonai Tzevaot. The whole world is filled with God's glory. Okay, so this ancient prayer composed by Jewish mystics, we imitate the angelic glorification of God. Although it appears in several versions, the Kedusha of the Amidah always contains three biblical quotations. The Kadosh, 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 holy, holy, holy. Baruch Kevod Adonai, right? Praised is Adonai's glory wherever God dwells. And then Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed, that Adonai will reign forever and ever. The liturgy surrounding these verses varies, being more elaborate and expansive on Shabbat and festivals than on weekdays, because the Kedusha is call and response. This is one of those prayers that cannot be recited without a minyan. And that's a good way to kind of remind ourselves which prayers are omitted if we do not have a minyan, if we are praying alone or do not have the required quorum of 10 Jewish adults. So the answer is any prayer that requires a call and response. Here, the Kedusha requires a call and response. Can't do it without a minyan. The Kaddishes, remember, we need everyone to say Yehei Shmei Rabbah. That's call and response. That's omitted. How about a Torah reading? Beginning of a Torah reading, the person who has an aliyah says, Baruch Hu et Adonai, Mavarach. Everyone has to respond. Baruch Adonai. Can't do that if there's no minyan. Same thing with Birkat Kohanim. When we do the priestly benediction, Yavarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ken yehi ratzon, may it be God's will. So these prayers, and the Baruch Hu, blessed is God, the one whose praise is due. Baruch Adonai Mavarach Leolam Va'ed. We can't respond without a minyan. So those prayers, the Baruch Hu, the Kedusha, the public Torah reading, the Birkat Kohanim, the priestly benediction, and all the Kaddishes cannot be recited and are excluded from the service without the presence of a minyan. So here we are. Az b'kol ra'ash gadol. Then in thunderous voice, rising above the chorus of seraphim, other heavenly beings call out words of blessing. Baruch kevod Adonai mimkamo. Praised is Adonai's glory wherever God dwells. Our sovereign, manifest yourself from wherever you dwell and rule over us, for we await you. When shall you rule in Zion? Matai timloch betzion. Bekarov be'amenu. Let it be soon in our day and throughout all time. May you be exalted and sanctified in Jerusalem, your city, from one generation to another, forever and ever. May our eyes behold your dominion, as described in the song of praise offered to you by David, rightfully anointed. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai will raise forever your God, O Zion, from generation to generation. Hallelujah. Then we have Ledor Vador. This famous text, especially here at Sinai Temple. If you look on the other side of this concrete wall, we're here in Cone Chapel at the corner of Wilshire Boulevard and Beverly Glen here in Westwood in Los Angeles. The other side of this concrete wall, we have a famous statue, a famous, what do you call it? Thank you. A famous sculpture that was dedicated by Sid and Ruth Pilot, Sid of blessed memory. Ruth, we love you, saying Ledor Vador, from generation to generation. This special prayer is so dear to us that our Cantor Emeritus, Cantor Mayer Finkelstein, wrote the world-famous setting of it. Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid God lecha. So on and so forth. So beautiful. Every Shabbat morning, our congregants gather arm in arm as we sing this beautiful prayer. But here it is. We're going to have this twice. Ledor vador nagid God lecha. From generation to generation, we will declare your greatness and forever sanctify you with words of holiness. For your praise will never leave our lips. For you, our God and sovereign, great and holy. Baruch atah Adonai, the holy God. Here it is again, the summary. Remember, each prayer ends with a chatima, ends with a summary. This time, God is the holy God, Kedusha, Kodesh. What does the word Kodesh mean, by the way? Kind of hard to define. We define it as holy, but the real translation is distinct or separate, special, important. Shabbat is holy. Why? Because it's distinct. It's separate from the rest of the week. God is holy. Why? Because God is separate from everything else. God is the creator. God is everything. So Kodesh is not only holy, but it's really separate and distinct. Now, here we are, the fourth bracha. And this is the one that I really want to point out. By the way, the top of the page on 162, that's the Kedusha. That's the third prayer if it's silent. Same text as we had in the evening. The fourth bracha in this case is going to be middle of 162 through the middle of 163. And if you remember from the evening service from Friday night, the fourth bracha was all about Vayachulu hashamayim v'ha'aretz, talking about creation. God as creator of heaven and earth, getting us into the spirit of Shabbat, talking about universal God, creator of the universe, and resting on the seventh day. Here, in this Kedushat Hayom, we're going to be focusing on God's specific relationship with the Jewish people. Take a look. Yismach Moshe b'matnat chelko. Moses rejoiced in his portion. For you called him Eved Ne'eman, a faithful servant. You adorned his head with a brilliant crown when he stood before you on Mount Sinai. He carried down 2 tablets of stone, inscribed with the instruction to observe Shabbat. As it is written in your Torah, here comes another proof text. This case, it's not Vayachulu Hashamayim, not creation. In this case, the proof text is Vishamru, right over here. Vishamru v'nei Israel from Exodus, chapter 31, verses 16 and 17. The people, Israel, shall observe Shabbat to maintain it as an everlasting covenant throughout all generations. Ot hi le'olam, it is a sign between me and the people Israel for all time. Ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz, that in 6 days Adonai made the heavens and the earth. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, and on the 7th day ceased from work and rested. And that word vayinafash is hard to translate. Nefesh is almost like a soul, right? Vayinafash is like to be ensouled. It's like to almost get another soul. Once again, the Hebrew is so beautiful and poetic, and every translation is an interpretation. We have to remember that even the most direct translations, it's the translator's interpretation of what the Hebrew is trying to say. So in this case, work and rested, work and re-ensouled, there's many different ways of approaching the text and translating it. Okay, so those paragraphs focused on the memory of Moses coming down with the 2 tablets of stone, like we recall in Exodus, and one of the commandments is to observe Shabbat. The next page, top of 163, Velo netato Adonai Eloheinu legoyei ha'aratzot. But Adonai our God, you have not given it to nations of the world, nor our sovereign have you bestowed it on idol worshippers, nor do the uncircumcised find rest on this day. For with love you have given Shabbat to the people Israel, our special relationship, right? The descendants of Jacob, with whom you have chosen. The people who sanctify the 7th day shall feel fulfilled and shall delight in your goodness. For you yourself were pleased with the 7th day and sanctified it, calling it the most beloved of days, a symbol of the work of creation. Zecher l'maaseh v'reshit. So specifically God's relationship with us as the Jewish people, the gift of Shabbat to us, not to the rest of the world, but our specific relationship with God, our special one. And then we have the next paragraph. This paragraph is going to be in every Shabbat Amidah, the Retzevim Nuchatenu paragraph. Our God and God of our ancestors, embrace our rest. Make us holy through your mitzvot, and let the Torah be our portion. Fill our lives with your goodness and gladden us with your deliverance. Purify our hearts to serve you truly. Adonai, our God, lovingly and willingly grants that we inherit your holy Shabbat, that the people Israel who make your name holy may find rest on this day. And here it is again, the TLDR. Too long, didn't read. What's the summary? Blessed are you, Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Blessed is God who what? Makes Shabbat Kodesh. Makes Shabbat holy, or makes Shabbat distinct, separate, important. That's paragraph 4. As we learned, there's the first 3 paragraphs, that start the Amidah, ancestors, Avot, Geverot, God's strength, Kedusha, God's holiness. This blessing in the middle, the sanctification of the day, sanctifying Shabbat. And then our last 3 prayers. 5th bracha, restoring Zion. Next page, 6th bracha, Modim, gratitude for life and its blessings, ending with Ve'al Kulam. And then on page 165, the 7th bracha, the prayer for peace. And this would be a great way to end the class, because this prayer for peace is different than the evening prayer for peace, Shalom Rav. This prayer, Sim Shalom, I have no problem saying it's one of my favorite prayers. I know there's so many prayers that we have, but I'll tell you why it's my favorite. Not only is it a prayer for peace, but within this prayer for peace, you have the prescription of what it means to be Jewish, of how to live a Jewish life. Literally right here. Watch this. Sim Shalom Ba'olam Tova V'racha. Grant peace in the world. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Blessing, grace, love, and compassion for us and for all the people Israel. Barchenu avinu kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha. Bless us, our Creator, united as one with the light of your presence. Ki ve'or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu. For by that light, Adonai, our God, you have given us a guide to life. What is the guide? We're all on the edge of our seats. This is so beautiful. Torat Chaim, literally a teaching of life. What's the teaching? The Ahavat Chesed, love kindness, righteousness, tzedakah, bracha, blessing, rachamim, compassion, Chaim, life, Veshalom, and peace. There it is. What does it mean to be Jewish? A guide to life. Love, kindness, righteousness, blessing, compassion, life, and peace. So beautiful. Notice it doesn't say pray 3 times a day. It doesn't say believe in this, or think about that. It's all about actions. It's all about how we exist, how we treat ourselves, how we treat our family, our community, those around us, our planet, our world. It's about our existence, kindness, righteousness, blessing, compassion, life, and peace. Uvacharta b'chaim. Choose life. A beautiful way to end the Amidah. It ends with V'tov be'enecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol etu v'chol sha'a bishlomecha. May it please you to bless your people Israel at every season and at all times with your gift of peace. And the ending bracha at the very bottom, blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. The final blessing of the Amidah, the 7th bracha of peace. Individual blessings on page 166, like we normally do. And then here it is, 167, Kaddish Shalem. You have made it to the end of an important part of the section. Kaddish Shalem says we just did something important. And that, my friends, concludes Shacharit, the Saturday morning service, the morning service. Next in the service comes the Torah service, Musaf, and concluding prayers. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the class and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.